Well everyone, I wanted to go ahead and compare the M4 Mac Mini that just came out and compare it against the M2 Mac Mini that's been out for a little bit of time, and I wanted to showcase which one is the better one for you. Now if you have all the money in the world, then definitely going up to something like an M4 Mac Mini might make a lot more sense. It's a newer machine, it's a better machine, it definitely is the more powerful one here. But I still think if you own an M2 Mac Mini, this is still a very good option for sure. And like I said, although the M2 one is still very good, the M4 and M4 Pro are way better. But if you want to pick up either one of these particular Macs, links will be down in the description. You can get them from there and you can help support the channel at the exact same time. Now, starting off with the outside of these particular Macs, on the outside there's a little bit of a difference here. The M2 Mac Mini on the outside is giving you this pretty flat design. It's kind of like the older style of Mac Minis, they're a little bit bigger. They're not ugly or anything like that. They do look a little bit different because the front sides and the sides of them are basically, there's nothing going on there. On the back side, that's where things get a little bit more interesting. So if you got the M2 model, you're getting two Thunderbolt 4 ports on the back side. You're getting two USB-A ports, you're getting an HDMI port, and you're getting your gigabit Ethernet port. Now, if you're getting the M2 Pro model, that one has four Thunderbolt 4 ports on the back. So you're either getting 2 or 4, depending on if you have the Pro or standard model. With the Mac Mini M4 model, on the other hand, this one's a little bit of a different story. So with this model, Apple has now changed out the front of this particular Mac. So remember how before all the ports were on the back of the M2 Mac Mini? Well, now on the M4 Mac Mini, we are now getting two USB Type-C ports on the front and the headphone jack. So that is a really nice thing to have, just basically having those type of I/O right there, because it does give you a little bit more capability when it comes down to it. You don't have to go through and figure out how to go and mess around with anything. You don't have to pull your thing on the back and then change it, a port or put a wire in on the back of your machine. The M4 Mac Mini takes it from the Mac Studio, and I definitely like having those ports on the front side. However, there is a little bit of a downside if you are going to something like the M4 Mac Mini coming from the M2 Mac Mini, and that is the USB Type-A ports. So we are no longer getting two USB Type-A ports on the back, we're now getting USB-C. Me personally, I love having USB-C, and I would much rather have that than going through and getting, the other type of ports. But if it is a big deal to you, then, you can go switch over to an M2 Mac Mini. So all in all, you're getting basically, 5 USB Type-C ports, 3 of which are Thunderbolt 4 ports. On the, M4 Mac Mini, you can also get the M4 Pro, which gives you 3 Thunderbolt 5 ports on the back. So that is a pretty big difference in and of itself. Now you're still maintaining HDMI ports on both and gigabit Ethernet ports on both as well. So you still have a lot of capability and a lot of overlap there as well, which is also very nice. But definitely when it comes down to the design of both, I think the M4 Mac Mini looks better. But a big thing here is that the M4 Mac Mini is substantially smaller than an M2 Mac Mini. It is thicker though, so it kind of goes up, it sticks out a little bit more. But from a portability standpoint, the M4 Mac Mini is so much more portable than the M2 Mac Mini. And that is one of the big things you're going to end up realizing, is that if you are switching over to something like an M2 Mac Mini, to an M4 Mac Mini from an M2 Mac Mini, the portability aspect of that machine, it is a pretty big one when it kind of comes down to it. So kind of keep that in mind when it kind of comes down to it. From a software longevity standpoint, this is going to be kind of interesting too, because you are going to be getting a much longer lasting, Mac on the M4 Mac Mini. But a big thing to keep in mind here is that both of these Macs are still going to be supported with software for many, many years. So you don't really have too much to worry about things from that perspective. You're also still getting Apple Intelligence on both of these Macs as well. So I do think that in and of itself is another very big thing to keep in mind there too. So when it comes down to that kind of stuff, the M4 Mac Mini and the M2 Mac Mini are still going to hold up very well from that side. Another small thing that is kind of interesting, if you're looking at basically the base models of these Macs, if you're getting the M2 Mac Mini, that Mac had support for up to 2 different displays. So you could go through and get 2 different displays on that Mac, which was cool. If you were going up to the M4 model though, those Macs now support 3 displays. So you can now get 3 displays on those Macs, which is a really nice thing to have too. So you don't really have to go ahead and worry about, does mine support 1 or 2 or 3 displays? The M4s all support 3 displays. The M2 Pro Mac Mini does support 3 different displays though. So keep that in mind. If you didn't want to switch up to that, you could go through and get that Mac, and you could also get 3 displays, support. Now, when it comes down to the performance side, this is also something that's very interesting. So on paper, right, the M4, let's just say the M2 Mac Mini starting off there, if you're getting the more maxed out model, you could get up to 12 cores on your CPU, whereas on the M4 Pro, that one is giving you 14 cores. you can get up to 19 core GPU on the M2 Pros, where the M4 Mac Mini is giving you up to 20 core GPU. The RAM is probably going to be the big difference though. The maxed out M2 model, the M2 Pro, was giving you 32 gigabytes of RAM, which is probably still good enough for a lot of people, right? Having that type of Mac that gives you that type of capability, I think is great. But the M4, the maxed out M4 Pro model, is giving you 64 gigabytes of RAM. So this is a pretty big difference because from that perspective, and they both get you an up to 8 terabytes of storage, but that RAM could actually be a pretty big difference. Like if you're somebody who wants to go and get a Mac that's going to be a little bit better from that particular, RAM management standpoint, you're going to be getting a much better machine on something like the M4 Pro and the M4 Mac Mini than the M2 Mac Mini. But I will tell you, if you currently own an M2 model and you're handling the performance and you're looking at it and you're playing games and doing all those things, if it's already not a big deal to you, then it may not be a big deal to you anyways, right? If you're getting something like the M2 model or the M4 model, if you're okay with an M2 model, then that's totally fine. To give you some perspective, I currently own an M1 Pro MacBook Pro. This thing is the base model for the M1 Pro. I do have 1 terabyte of storage in it. And the thing I can tell you is I probably won't upgrade from this Mac for the next couple of years. At least until next year, I'm going to be probably keeping it. Maybe end of next year, I'll buy like a used M2 model or something like that. But this is an M1 Pro MacBook, right? It still has, a lot of power. But if you own something like an M2 Pro Mac, that is a very powerful machine. That still is very fast. Even that standard M2 model is still very, very fast. It really just comes down kind of into what are you going to use your machine for, right? If you're going to go through and if you're going to use your machine for like, crazy performing stuff, then maybe you should switch up to the M4 model. But in my personal opinion, if I was to go through and just, you buy a Mac that I would use for the next couple of years, I think an M2 model, even the base model, as long as I have enough storage in it, is still very fast for me. And the reason for that is because my M1 Pro model, I'm kind of maxing out some stuff here and there, but it's not on an everyday basis. I'm not, let's say I had an M2 model, I wouldn't go through and it wouldn't change my portability aspect because I'm not really moving my Mac Minis around anymore either. From a performance level, I wouldn't really complain about. Kind of the only reason I would go and switch up to something like an M4 Mac from an M2 Mac Mini is one, if I was already looking for a Mac, I was about to buy the M2 Mac Mini and the M4 came out, I would go for the M4. 2, if I wanted more display support, like if I wanted the option of getting more displays, then instead of getting an M2 Pro model, I would just get the standard M4 model. And 3, if I wanted a Mac and I wanted the ones with more ports on the front, I would definitely go for something like the M4 Mac Mini because that one is going to be giving me more ports, more capability, and that one definitely makes a lot more sense for me to go ahead and buy rather than something like an older M2 model. So if you're able to get an M2 model for cheaper, certified refurbished, used market, that kind of situation, then the M2 is still a very good machine, still very, very powerful. But if you want to save a little bit of money, if you want to spend a little bit more money and get a more powerful machine, then maybe the M4 is the one for you. But I think the M2 model is still very fast and very powerful, but the M4 one is a pretty big design change, and I'm a big fan of the M4 model as well. So that's kind of how both these Macs kind of compare. If you have any other thoughts or questions, please let me know in the comment section below. Hit the like button, that would mean so much, but definitely hit that subscribe button. More importantly than everything else, I love every single one of you guys. Hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out till then.